Lori here. I am going to do another video for you where I'm wrapping up my reading year, and I'm going to tell you the 2022 debuts that I think you should read if you haven't read them yet. There's a mix. There's some YA, there's some middle grade, there's even some adult, so it's like a taste for every folks. But these are books and authors that really stood out to me this year. Some of these may have graced my top reads of the year list. Some of them may have graced my surprising reads of the year list. But they made a big enough impression for me that I'm following these authors on Goodreads. I'm following them on social media to see what they're coming out with next, because I'm definitely interested in their next book. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Caitlin Hill. She wrote Love from Scratch. It was her YA contemporary debut. She has a book coming out in 2023 that I'm super excited for, but this was a hate to more food-based story that I really enjoyed. So let's take a picture of the cover. A ton of people talk about this one. I don't think it got enough love and attention that it deserved, but I enjoyed it because it was kind of a unique take. Basically followed these two characters who were basically competing for a food related internship at like the Food Network, and they wound up having to compete for the one internship spot in like the fall, and then they wound up working together, and they got like on like a background show, and the audience fell in love with them and were convinced that they were dating. So it was a little bit hate to more, which is not always my favorite trope, but this was more like animosity to more, and there was a competition element to it, which I really liked. And I thought the setting was super cool. It was a fun read. I definitely want to read more by this author in the future. Hate to more is not my favorite trope, but this author did it well that I liked it. And I'm definitely going to read more by this author in the future. And then the next author we are going to chat about is Nita Prose, and she wrote The Maid, which I think everyone has heard of it. It won the Goodreads Choice Award, but I just really love this book and thought it gave me cozy vibes and found family vibes. So let's take a peek at that photo. People have a lot of issues with the Goodreads Choice Awards, but this year they had like two of the books that I really loved won, so I don't have any beef with them. But this was a book that I thought really worked, and I was watching Meg from a Book's reading wrap up, and she said that she thinks, you know, mysteries are becoming more prevalent, and I'm definitely more of a mystery reader, not a thriller reader, and this read to me sort of as a mystery. But if you don't know what the premise is, it's about this maid that is cleaning up a hotel and finds a dead body, and you're in her head, and she's definitely neurodivergent, so being in her head is like a little bit of like a culture shock sometimes. Like you gotta like understand how she's thinking, and in her head is like a very interesting place, and she's very, very analytical, so she's trying to solve this. I loved it. I think her name is Molly, and it was a lot about like her uncovering this. It was really about found family in like a very unique way, and I really, really love the mystery. So I really hope Nita Prose writes more, because I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. Definitely my favorite cozy mystery of the year, and I'm really happy that I found a new author. I don't know if she's coming out with anything in 2023, but I'm definitely going to be keeping a nose out. And the next book that we are going to chat about is The Ivory Key. This was a YA fantasy book that I got from Owl Crate, and I will put the cover up over here. Another book that was really, really delightful. The author's name, I'm so bad at names, I apologize. Ashaya Rahman, and this is an Indian-inspired story, and it was like really interesting. But you follow like all these characters in this family. You follow the king, 2 twins, and like another brother, and the magic in their society is sort of like leaving them, and that's basically what makes their society work, and they all have to sort of work together to save the magic in their environment. And I really like this one. Book 2 is coming out. I have to remember it's coming out. I'll have to like make myself a reminder. But I really liked her writing style. I feel like I learned a lot about Indian mythology when I was reading it, but I also just loved all the characters, and it was very, very family focused, very political focused, which just tends to be what I like in a fantasy, and I loved it. Another book that I don't think I heard anyone talk about this year, but book 2 is coming out. It's called The Crimson Forest. And it's coming out August 1st. So we have a while to wait, which is probably why it didn't pop up on any of my lists. But Definitely want to check this one out. And every character, there was like 4 siblings that I loved all of them. So I really want to read the sequel to this in 2023. And it's an author that if you want to read more like mythology based stories or like stuff that has a bit of a diverse cultural background, which this definitely did, I would recommend this because I really enjoyed it. And it reminded me almost of reading something from the Rick Riordan Present line because it was just really, really interesting. And it has still stayed with me, and I read it so early in the month, which is good news. The next book we are going to chat about is, how can I not have a list with this, because he's definitely a debut. He has been involved in the publishing world for a long time, but Travis Baldari wrote Legends and Lattes, and he is one of the standouts of the year for me. Let's just look at this beautiful cover. We all know what it looks like, but let's just admire it. This book is the definition of a cozy fantasy, and I'm sure everyone and their mother has talked about it. It's probably going to make my top reads of the year list, to be very, very honest with you, but it's just a cozy fantasy. It's a high fantasy with low stakes, and it basically follows this orc that decides she doesn't want to be an orc anymore, and she wants to open up a coffee shop, and she does that, and it is delightful. It's like Dungeons and Dragons meets a small town romance, and I was here for it. 5 stars, delightful. His writing style was so sweet. It got picked up by Tor. There's an audiobook now. We're getting a second book set in the same world. He's an audiobook narrator, which means I have to go back and read the other books he did. I'm here for it, and if you have not read this, please do. If you're like a small town romance reader, I think you would enjoy it. If you're like a high fantasy reader, if you like D&D, I think you'd like it. There's no one that I don't think would like this book because it's perfect. It has just the right amount of like adventure, but also like low stakes. It was great. I really, really loved it. And if you like Hallmark movies, this would work for you because it literally was like watching a Hallmark movie. So very, very delightful, and really happy he came out with this because it was definitely the highlight of my year. Definitely. And let's take a look at the beautiful cover. Another author I'm going to talk about is Emily Theed, and she wrote This Vicious Grace. I got an arc of this when I went to ALA. I loved it. Here is a pretty photo, and then we're going to chat about it. Oh, there's a trope in books that I don't always love, and it's like when a character can't be touched because it's been done a lot, but the way Emily did it, I just loved it. So you basically follow this character named Alessia, and her gift is her powers are supposed to magnify others, and she's supposed to be the queen, but the problem is that her powers keep overproducing and she winds up killing everyone. So she's on her 3rd marriage, trying to make sure that like nothing bad happens and she can basically lead this kingdom. It was a wild ride. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of like friendship dynamics in the story, and it was really, really well done. I felt like even though she was a little bit isolated, like the character, like another example I would give you is like Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. Another character that sort of had that thing. I still felt she was connected to the people around her, and I struggle when characters are like so isolated that they don't have connections. She definitely had connections, and it was very, very compelling and very, very interesting, and I'm really curious to see where book 2 goes. Again, it had a lot of elements of political intrigue. Found family was also prevalent, and there was a bit of magic and mystery that I really liked. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to pick this book up and really excited for the sequel. It is coming out in 2023, and I will definitely be there to get it. But yeah, just take a sneak peek at the photo, and we'll talk about the next book, which is going to be How to Heal a Griffin, which is a middle grade book. So we'll show that photo as well. So this was another nominee for the best middle grade and children's in 2022, which I think is totally worth it. To save her family, she must make a dangerous bargain and tip the scales of the balance. This was pitched to me as sort of like, first of all, it was set around like Christmas time, which I liked, but basically this character that had to like become a veterinarian, and she had to like talk to creatures in her veterinary practice, and I just thought it was very, very cute. It also had plus size rep. It was very, very adventure focused. She had to save her brother. A lot of elements that I liked. I wish the story would have dived a little bit more into her being a veterinarian and using that power, but it was a fun, compelling read, very, very quick. I read it I think like in October. It was a very, very fun read, and it did have elements of like being around Christmas time, so you could really read it anywhere, but it was definitely a really, really fun action adventure story with rep that you don't necessarily see, and it was fun, and I definitely want to read more by this author in the future. I think this was her middle grade debut. She had a couple of children's books out, but I really enjoyed it. And then the next book we are going to chat about is Skander and the Unicorn Thief, which is another middle grade debut. This was probably one of my favorite middle grade reads of the whole year, but it was great. It was another book that I just needed in my life when I read it, and I devoured it. But you basically follow this young boy, and his whole dream is to be a unicorn rider, and his sister Kendra failed the year before, so he thinks he has no hope, but when he suddenly gets to be a unicorn rider, his world is transformed, and when he dives into another world of political intrigue, magic, and a magic school, and mysteries, his world is turned upside down. I devoured this book. I read it so fast, and I just loved these characters, and it gave me like Keeper of the Lost City vibes and like Nevermore vibes by Jessica Townsend. It's a story that I think can really like stand the test of time, and you can just keep on expanding and learning more about the world and making it bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm so excited that we're getting book 2. I'm definitely going to be checking it out. But this was an author that definitely stood out to me in 2022. And if you, like me, are looking for the next middle grade series, I think we all secretly are. Definitely check this one out, especially if you've read Nevermore, if you've read Keeper of the Lost Cities. This might be another one, and it's a creature-led fantasy, which you don't see a lot of, and I really enjoyed it. And the next book we are going to chat about and feature a photo is, okay, so the next two are a little bit of cheating because they don't technically come out yet, but I couldn't do a list of the books I read in 2022 and not feature these authors because they really were standouts to me. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Kate J. Armstrong, and she's coming out with Nightbirds in February 2023, but I was lucky enough to get an art copy at Comic-Con, and I just have to talk about her because she deserves to be on this list. I'm going to show you guys both of these books. So this is Nightbirds. Look at my tabs. This book was delightful, and I'm just going to talk about it a little bit because I'm probably going to reread it in 2023 and do a whole reading vlog about it, but I did read it and I loved it, and I'm really curious to see how the story is going to be done in a final product. But you basically follow Simta, and also if you have not listened to Pub Dates with Amy Kaufman and this author, definitely do it because you get a lot of background information about this story. But you follow 3 Nightbirds, and their powers, they can gift their magic with a kiss. And you know, it kind of goes from there. And you have 3 very different characters. There is romance intrigue set in a 1920s world. There's a lot of political intrigue, and guys, this book was magical. It's not witchcraft, but it is magic, and I just loved it. I loved her writing style, and if you know nothing about this author, she also does like a history podcast, and I feel like history was imbued in everything that happened, and I just loved it. Definitely a new favorite for me. It's definitely going to make my top reads of the year list, even though I'm probably going to reread it in 2023. But oh my god, I loved it. And I think her writing style was what I wanted in a historical fantasy because it had the elements of the 1920s, but it also had magic, and you know, it also had a lot of diversity in it. There was 3 very different main characters, and I felt like you can find yourself in those characters. So yeah, definitely a standout read for me, and I'm really excited that I read it early, but definitely check it out in 2022. That's why I had to put it on this list. Sort of the same exact thing. I also have another arc coming out in early January. This is A Runa's Fate by Kaylee Smith, and this is another witchy novel. And this is another one where she has, you know, she basically is basically one step closer to war, and she is the catalyst of war, and she's been hiding with her 2 best friends, and it was a wild ride. These 2 books may possibly be my favorite reads of the year list. They don't even come out this year, but I just loved the witchcraft in this story. You don't get a lot of witchy stories, and this I felt was super witchy. I also thought the romance was really interesting, and I was captivated. So these are 2 authors that I really think you guys should consider reading in 2023. They're definitely standouts to me, for sure, and they will definitely be featured on my my top reads of the year list. I don't care if they're not out yet, but they're gonna be featured. And then the last 2 books I'm going to feature on this book is 2 more YA novels. One is Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen, which I just loved. This was a book that I was struggling to finish, so I wound up putting it down and I picked it back up, and oh my goodness, it has one of my favorite tropes. But enough about that. Let's look at the cover. So in this book, you follow a main character named Violet, and she is a seer, and she is sort of convinced to sort of use her powers to sort of wheedle, like, make the politics work for her. And the other character is Cyrus, and he's a prince, and they have had a relationship in the past. Actually, Violet saved him in the past, but they are really not friends. They have a very, very combative relationship, which kind of goes into one of my favorite tropes. Friends to hate to friends to more. And this book is spicy. Not as spicy as some of the other YAs that I read last year, but this is really, really fun. And it's just, again, a lot of political intrigue in the story, a lot of witchcraft. There was also just a lot happening in the story that really captured me, and it was a fast-paced read. And when I actually had the time to focus on it, I loved it. I love Gina Chen's writing style, and I just was really captivated. And then the last book we're going to chat about is A Magic Steeped in Poison, which is a new release to me. She actually came out with 2 books this year, so the duology is done. But yeah, let's look at that pretty photo because it's really, really pretty. It's a competition-style novel where the main character accidentally caused or created the death of her mother, and her sister's very, very sick. There's an illness kind of sweeping through the nation, and she is hoping that if she goes to this competition at the Capitol and she uses her powers, she can get some allowances for her sister to be okay. And the whole book is a competition. It was a wild ride, and I love competition stories, but I'm really excited to read book 2, like really excited. So yeah, those are like the 11 authors in 2022 that stood out to me that I'm really excited to read more from, or just that I'm going to be pushing you all to read. But yeah, let me know in the comments what are some 2022 debuts that you think you really liked. Again, sorry for teasing you a little bit, but I had to shout out KJ Armstrong and Kaylee Smith because they deserve all the praise that they can get, and I definitely think you should go check out their books. But let me know in the comments what are some 2022 debuts that you have read, and I'll talk to you for another video soon. Bye, friends.